Diaspora is a network of global Indian origin leaders from diverse backgrounds and professions in the United States.
I started this almost 10 years ago. It's hard to believe. But in such a short time, the Indian American community has come a long way.
This non-profit organization was founded in 2012 by M.R. Rangaswamy, who's an entrepreneur, a community builder, and a philanthropist.
Diaspora is the first organization to bring together everybody in the community, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a tech executive, an academic, an artist. So we were an inclusive group that pulled together all the voices of the community, and that's our strength.
The organization is led by Sanjeev Joshipura, the executive director of Diaspora.
He had a vision of making sure that we engage actively in track 2 diplomacy. And essentially what that means is whenever there is a presidential visit from America to India or a prime ministerial visit in the other direction, Diaspora is called upon by the White House and the State Department in Washington or by the MEA or the Prime Minister's office in New Delhi to convene leaders.
NewsX proudly presents the VaKu Diaspora Dialogue with M.R. Rangaswamy and Sanjeev Joshipura. Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX VaKu. My name is Megha Sharma, and joining me on the broadcast are two gentlemen who represent Diaspora, which is a non-profit Indian American community forum that has been built, conceptualized for the welfare and well-being and growth of the Indian community living in the United States of America. It's my pleasure to introduce to you all Mr. M.R. Rangaswamy, who's the president of Diaspora, and Sanjeev Joshipura, who's the executive director for Diaspora. It's great to have you guys on the show with us.
Yeah, good to be here, Megha.
Thanks, Megha. Great to connect again.
Absolutely. My first question directed to the president of Diaspora, MR, how has the journey been so far of taking ahead the idea of building a community around the diaspora, Indian diaspora in America? And it has grown leaps and bounds, as has the Indian community in the United States. And how has your personal experience been like heralding it through the years?
Yeah, so this is a great question. Again, I started this almost 10 years ago. It's hard to believe. But in such a short time, the Indian American community has come a long way. Diaspora has come a long way. And the main reason for that is our community, prior to 2012, if you will, was organized more on ethnic grounds, maybe more on professional organizations. Diaspora is the first organization to bring together everybody in the community, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a tech executive, an academic, an artist. So we were an inclusive group that pulled together all the voices of the community, and that's our strength. Our strength is our diversity. We have both, people of Indian origin, born in India, people born in the US, Indians from other countries who have moved to the US. So it's a rich, diverse group that is very strong because of its diversity. And so I think that's what we've been able to do in the past 10 years. And as the community has grown, there have been more voices and more ideas come forth. And we are the voice for that. We are a force for good. And that's what has stood us in good shape so far.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. You have said that, it's been a journey of a decade, and going ahead, forging the path for the diaspora community for decades to come. Emma, you've spoken about, diversified groups, be it engineers or doctors, medical fraternity, you talk about aerospace, you talk about businesses. There has been this massive shift where India is being looked upon as a pivot in the geostrategic arena, and in wake of the set of developments that have taken place post-COVID or during the COVID era, there seems to be a bent towards India and Indian businesses and Indian trade and investment and supply chains being shifted elsewhere and removing themselves from China and the Chinese mainland markets. What kind of curiosities and questions do the businessmen, traders, associations that you have interacted with in the past and continue to do that have at this point of time to allow for this smooth transition to take place from other countries into India?
Yeah, I think the thing that came up during the pandemic that exposed itself was the fact that most companies in the world relied on one supply chain, and that supply chain came from India, right? I'm sorry, from China. And in that midst, people started looking at an alternative supply chain, a second source, and so forth. And India was very well positioned to do that. And I know the Indian government also has opened the doors for companies to come in. So I think, the pandemic gave India this opportunity to be the second place to go to. That's one. On the other hand, also the world is reorganizing itself geopolitically, right? You've seen the Quad, where India, Australia, Japan, and the US are getting together. So new groups are forming. So I think all this has come together at the right time for India. And India has the talent. India has the manufacturing skills. India has the capability of really being the second source, and hopefully in some of the industries being the first source, if you will. So I think this is a great position, and I think a lot of companies are absolutely looking at India in that regard. Yeah.
Absolutely. Taking this question further ahead, then Sanjeev, I'd like to ask you as well about what is the contributing factor of Diaspora in allowing for this collaboration to take place seamlessly between the United States businesses and businesses over here? And do you also play that leverage card in terms of collaborating with governments as well, policy changes as well, alterations as well, and act as a medium to ensure that businesses, trade, investments, and other paraphernalia are accommodated and seamlessly transformed?
So just to be clear, Megha, thanks for the question, by the way. Just to be clear, we are broader than just a business or a lobbying organization. That is not our core. We focus a lot on entrepreneurship and innovation, which is one of our key pillars. And we do have very strong links with governments at the highest levels in India, here in the United States, and other countries as well. But we are broader than that. We are a diaspora organization as opposed to being a business council. Now, having said that, we have since 2012, when MR founded in Diaspora, he had a vision of making sure that we engage actively in track 2 diplomacy. And essentially what that means is whenever there is a presidential visit from America to India, or a prime ministerial visit in the other direction, in Diaspora is called upon by the White House and the State Department in Washington, or by the MEA or the Prime Minister's office in New Delhi, to convene leaders, typically, in a closed door session, leaders in philanthropy, leaders in academics, leaders in business, entrepreneurship, investments, all of the above, and discuss issues of bilateral importance. And we've been doing that literally every year since 2012. And because of that, we are now finding that there is a tremendous amount of interest among leaders resident in India in a wide variety of fields, whether it's philanthropy, business, entrepreneurship, I mentioned all of the above, government itself, to engage with an organization like Diaspora. Because we are a bridge between diaspora leaders from all over the world in different countries and leaders in India. And in fact, to take advantage of this interest and cater to their interests, we are in the process of opening up our first international office outside the US in India, which will occur later this year or early next year, the pandemic notwithstanding.
Wow, that's fantastic. In fact, congratulations to you. And so are there, talking about the first office to open outside of United States in India, are there also plans of opening up more chapters, more offices in Europe, in Africa, Australia, as your journey grows along?
So we are building relations, Megha, with a lot of the top diaspora. We released 3 lists in the recent past. One is a global business leaders list, which has 65 CEOs of Indian origin from about 10 different countries. They're all Fortune 500 or Forbes 2000 companies. And we held an event with them. We followed that up with a global government leader list, where there are over 200 people of Indian origin in 15 countries, in very senior positions like head of state, chief justice of the judiciary, central bank head, cabinet ministers, things like that. And then we most recently released the philanthropy leaders list. Again, global in nature and people of Indian origin. And we are finding that through these lists, there is a tremendous amount of interest in media across the world in countries where Indian diaspora reside, whether it's Singapore, UAE, the UK, Canada, even Australia, and various other parts, the Caribbean, etc. And we are building relationships with leaders in all of those countries and all of those areas. Also in the past, we have taken delegations of our members of our network to Israel in 2017. Not many people know this, Megha, but Israel is 1% people of Indian origin. And we focused on creating what we call the tech triangle between India, Israel, and Silicon Valley, and the Indians in Silicon Valley specifically, right? We followed that up with a delegation to Canada, where we were introduced by Prime Minister Trudeau to 4 of his cabinet ministers who are people of Indian origin. And in 2019, before the pandemic, we went to the UK, where we met with the leaders of Oxford and Cambridge, and we were felicitated at the House of Lords by 25 parliamentarians of Indian origin. And we are now focusing on Singapore and the UAE and other countries beyond that as well. So absolutely, yes, that is an area of our focus.
Wow, so that's a flurry of activity in various continents, and congratulations to you, both of you and your team, for having been able to achieve that that milestone. And MR, since Sanjeev has spoken about the recent events that had taken place, the philanthropy leaders list, you talk about the global leaders list, and you have some of the top creme de la creme from each of the segments representing what the Indian American community is capable of doing and has been doing for the past several years and decades. But if you take a look in the last decade, especially in the Trump era, as well as the Biden administration, there are a lot of Indian American faces, top of the charts being Kamala Harris. And obviously there are more appointments after appointments that are being made of the Indian American origin individuals. There are elections that are taking place where Biden was able to take over Trump and become the president of the United States of America, witnessed that there was quite the turnover that had taken place with the Asian community, with the Indian American community voting and coming out in large numbers that had been unprecedented. So all these developments that are taking place politically, economically, when it comes to businesses and other arenas, do you think the Indian American community especially has been able to forge a path for itself and create an identity for itself, which is much better suited for the Indians and across the globe and India than it was perhaps, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think the main difference, Megha, is we're speaking together now as opposed to individuals. We're speaking collectively. I think that's been a big change. And in terms of the political side of the house, India has played a key role in that when we started in 2012, there was nobody of Indian origin in the United States Congress. So we said we're 1% of the population, we have no representation, literally, right? Mm-hmm. So the Indiaspora network, Indiaspora itself can't endorse or give money to political causes or politicians, but as individuals, we gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to anybody with an Indian name. Khanna, Krishnamurthy, Jayapal, Bera. And we were so lucky that in 3 election cycles of making these investments, we were in 2017, 1% of Congress, right? So Indiaspora played that, kind of catalytic role in getting people to run for office, supporting them as individuals and so forth, right? And then what has happened is that has spawned more and more Indians to be interested in running for office. And if you fast forward to 2020, over 300 Indian Americans ran for office, school boards, city council, mayors, all kinds of races, right? So what has happened now is that there's a collective excitement and interest in public service within our community. So we've come a long way, as evidenced now by the Biden administration, with over 75 Indian Americans in the administration. So it's really come in 10 short years. I think the community has done a tremendous amount of accomplishments.
And absolutely, Indiaspora having to play a crucial role in this development and in this transformative change is highly commendable. And Sanjeev, I'll come back to you and talking about the set of developments that have taken place, And also policy is something which is key to any sort of reform that takes place for a nation, for a particular community, ethnic, religious, or otherwise in a particular country. And United States is obviously home for diverse communities from every part of the world. Also, does Diaspora allow for bringing about and suggesting and giving out a guideline in terms of bringing about these reformative legislatures into the Senate? And on to that basis, what is it that you would like to witness in terms of changes that would allow for the Indian American community to grow bountiful in the next 5 years or so?
So I'll answer your question in two ways, Megha. First of all, in terms of having relations with senior figures in government, whether it's the Indian government, the American government, as MR has already mentioned, we do establish and cultivate and nurture those relationships over time as part of our effort of inspiring and positioning the Indian diaspora to be a global force for good. Now, we have a lot of conversations, as you might imagine, with these people, but we are not the kind of organization that you will see on Twitter or issuing press releases about, advocacy or policy changes that we recommend. We typically don't do that. Rather, we are viewed and we have established ourselves as a trusted conduit of information, sort of behind the scenes. And we tell the government officials on both sides, not just what they would like to hear, but what we think they need to hear. Mm-hmm. And they view us as such, and they come to us for that. But, we don't advocate and lobby in the public arena in terms of what kinds of changes we would like. That's one. But the other thing I'd like to mention as well is just in terms of positioning the Indian American community as a voice in the political space and enhancing that voice, as MR was just answering you in the previous question. We in Diaspora is the only organization to date to have hosted a ball for an incoming president. Mm-hmm. We are also the only organization, the Indian Diaspora organization, to have hosted a Diwali celebration in the historic Library of Congress building. And so there is a lot of work that we do to position the Indian community in America with the political class and the political establishment, which in turn automatically leads to our voices being heard loud and clear.
Interesting. So then, Emma, having such a powerful backing, collaborations, connections from the who's who of the Indian American community, from various diverse sectors, you've already established that, spoken about it at length. What are the goals and objectives in bringing about a better well-being for the Indian community? What is it? Is it in terms of education? Is it in terms of the issues that are related to immigrants? Is it in terms of policy changes that are required for representation of the Indian American community or the Asian community? What is it that you guys are now striving ahead for making this United States of America a better place for the Indian American community, for the diaspora community, for providing an equal standing, for providing an equal ground to then compete with the United States, the citizens of the United States of America, who are the natives, as well as several other communities that have evolved ever since they set foot in the United States?
Yeah, so the Indian Americans, I think, have a responsibility. We're the fastest growing ethnic community. We're the highest earning demographic, highest educated people in the US. So with that comes a lot of responsibility, and that is to work with other people, right? Especially people of color. So when Black Lives Matter happened a year ago, we came out in strong support of Black Lives Matter. We had a town hall and met with both leaders of our community and the Black community as well. We have now made more strides in working with young African-American students to be mentored, and on Juneteenth, which is the first new holiday in the US this year, we stood side by side with Reverend Jesse Jackson in support of this and celebrated this new holiday. So I think one of the things we're doing is, as we live in this country and become much more American, We have to work with other people. So people of color is very important to our community. So the Black community is someone we work with. Also more recently with anti-Asian hate. There were a lot of hate crimes against Asians. We stood up in support of them and also wrote an editorial, opposing this kind of, shameless violence and so forth. So we've done a lot to work with other communities. I think that's a key role. The second thing is also we can't forget the next generation of our community as well. Keep in mind, many of us here have children and they are Americans. They were not born in India, they were born in the US. So one of the things we're doing at Diaspora is created a new initiative called Diaspora Next, which is for the 20 and 30-year-olds who are born in the US, who bring different perspective, energy, and so forth, to pull them into the community, listen to their ideas, bring them up, because they're going to be representing us in the years to come. That's another thing. And I think Sanjeev earlier alluded to philanthropy as being one of the pillars. We have now done a lot of work to get this community, this rich community, to give back more, both to where we live here in the US and also to India. And in that regard, we've set a big, bold, audacious goal of doubling the giving and impact of our community the next 5 years, right? So that's one thing that's happening. The second thing is we don't want to let go of the challenges our community faces. Even though we are the richest community in the US, there are over 250,000 Indians in the US who live below the poverty level in the US. Hard to imagine, but true. The other thing that is not reported much is that Indians, after the Mexican community, are the highest undocumented community in the US. The estimate is over 400,000 people of Indian origin do not have the papers to live in the US. So these are all issues we're wrestling with. We want to bring and shine a spotlight on that, to improve their conditions, to be advocates with the community for them. And so, there are a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely. And you have that burden rightfully on your shoulders and allowing for these transformations to take place. Let me shift my focus to your personal journeys of having traveled from India to America, and what was it that allowed you to make that decision? What was the motivation behind it? And Emma, I'll start with you. Was this the American dream that you were able to accomplish, having set up Diaspora, and you have a wide range of activities, and your curriculum vitae is replete with the kind of investment opportunities and entrepreneurial opportunities that you have been able to take in your stride and perform beautifully?
Yeah, I think it's been a great journey. It's not always been up and to the right. We all came here with $8 in our pocket in those days. And so we had to kind of initially really be frugal, work hard, get the support of Americans and other people in the community to succeed. So we can't lose sight of that. We came here with nothing, but a lot of people helped us to grow and be successful in the US. And, had a lot of failures along the way as well. But I think the US gives you that kind of system where you can fail and you can try again, which there's no stigma on that. And so I've personally witnessed that a couple of times, even during my life. So you have to be kind of always looking back and saying, okay, you didn't come here with much and you've now been, successful. So the main thing that drives me moving forward is giving back, supporting others, being helpful. And I think that's the ethos of the Diaspora community and network, is to help each other. And as we call it, it's strength in numbers, but helping each other is what makes all that happen. And so there's a lot more work to be done in the next decade of Diaspora. So we're not resting on our laurels. There's a lot more work to be done.
If I may ask you, how did your journey begin? What age did you arrive in the United States? What is it that you started off with? And obviously you had big dreams, which you have accomplished and achieved. So that's fantastic. But how did you start off your journey?
I came here as a student when I was 21, and that's a long, several decades ago. And then somehow I was fortunate to move to Silicon Valley following the advice of someone in the early days. And little did I know that Silicon Valley would become what it is today. We all look at it today and go, wow, this is an amazing place. But when I came here 40 years ago, there was hardly anything. There were orange groves and a few crazy people like Steve Jobs saying we're going to change the world. Yeah. But little did we know that they would actually change the world. And it was great to be lucky and be part of, this group of people who were here since the 80s to kind of see this change happen, and also to create a lot of wealth for our community and succeed. So really, that's really been what has been happening here. But I don't want to, take away from the fact that the United States gave us a lot of support, gave us great education, gave us that system to be successful. And so we are ever grateful to that. And we want to make sure that all the Indian Americans and others can participate in this American dream.
Absolutely. And coming to you, Sanjeev, the same question. When was it that you started off? What triggered you to move to America? It must have been an arduous, difficult journey with challenges galore, but the position that you've reached, brought yourself to, and obviously many more dreams to accomplish.
Yeah, so Megha, I'll just echo, first of all, what Emma said, that it takes a village to help one succeed. It takes a significant amount of luck and circumstance. And it's an up and down journey, right? It's always zigzag. It's never linear, as people might imagine. When one has sort of accomplished something, the sense is that it's up and up, but it's not always the case. The other thing I'll mention just quickly before I dive into my own personal journey briefly is that we have experienced many people who have come to America like I did in the late 90s and early 2000s, and people that came before me, like MR did, have experienced America as a land of opportunity. And it is a fundamental belief that we don't want to lose sight of, that is something that America is, and indeed can continue to be. And it provides for that, second chance, the second win, the third chance if you fail. There is no stigma, as MR said. So you sort of get up and try again. In my own case, just briefly, born and raised in Mumbai, Bombay then, and then moved to North America for higher studies, got a graduate education, did my MBA, worked in the corporate sector at various multinationals in finance and strategy, but then pivoted my career towards an area which I've always had a tremendous passion for, which is the nonprofit space, the international arena, the political arena, those kinds of areas. Managed a U.S. Senate political campaign unsuccessfully. We were talking about failures, but you learn a lot more when you lose than when you win. So I guess in hindsight, I'm kind of thankful that it was unsuccessful in a sense. Worked on Capitol Hill as an advisor to senators and congressmen on international affairs and economic issues, and then got very much into the financial sector, trade association with international large member companies. Followed that up with Avtar, which is what I'm currently doing in the U.S.-India space. Lectured at the U.S. State Department on U.S.-India policy, and then I've been tremendously fortunate over the past 5 years to be working at Diaspora. And we've done some work, but there's a lot of work more to be done and a long way to go in the overall mission of positioning the Indian diaspora as a force for good globally.
Well, I wish you all the very best, both of you gentlemen, M.R. Rangaswamy and Sanjeev Joshipura from Diaspora, sharing with us their journey that has taken place in a period of 10 years, and obviously forging the path ahead for a better life and a legacy to be held by the Indian Americans that are a force to be reckoned with right now in the United States of America. I wish you both once again all the very best, and thank you for joining us on this episode of NewsX VaKu.
Thank you, Megha.
Thanks for having us on.
Now, if you like the work that we are going ahead and doing for building a community around the Indian diaspora for the first time ever on mainstream Indian television, then go ahead, support us on Memboro.
Limited memberships are available at memboro.com/VaKu. For 100 rupees or $1.50 a month, you can support our work, recommend to us who we should profile, ask questions from our guests, get access to exclusive chats, hangouts, podcasts, merchandise, and much more. Memboro.com/VaKu. Join us now. Watch interviews before they air on television, recommend people we should profile, get exclusive invites to diaspora webinars and hangouts, ask questions of our guests.
Get access to exclusive merchandise, have your name profiled on our TV broadcast, vote on the VaKu Hall of Fame, suggest who should get our VaKu Golden Chakra Awards. Sign up now, log on to memboro.com/VaKu.